One that pops in my mind that I think was really interesting is an older movie. I don't even know what year, but certainly earlier 2000s. Was called The Game with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. That was amazing, and you know, talk about customer experience, because that whole movie was about perspective, right? And I think customer experience is really tied to perspective. And then maybe another, you know, an Oscar-winning classic that comes to mind is like The Usual Suspects, you know, and something where, you know, without spoiler alerts, right? I mean, where the truth might not be the truth, or maybe it is the truth, but it's the truth from a different perspective, even. And you know, there's a lot to be said about a movie like that just, you know, kind of at the time was so unique. Right now everyone expects a twist and they're looking for the twist, but I don't think back then, you know, that was the case. So those would be three that I would highlight.
That's fascinating, and I want to dig into this a little bit more, but you talk about, I never thought about this before, you talked about how customer experience a lot of times is about perspective. And perspective is such a fascinating word because okay, so I learned this word a couple of years ago. I was doing a presentation at a local high school, and a young lady who presented after me, she was a junior, senior in high school. She presented about this word called sonder. S-O-N-D-E-R, sonder. And sonder, for those who aren't familiar, you all probably know it, I didn't. It essentially means that everyone has as rich of an internal dialogue and life experience as you do. We all see the world as revolving around us, but everybody else also sees the world revolving around them. And so you talk about how perspective, why is perspective from your standpoint so important in customer experience?
I mean, first off, I didn't know that word, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic word that I wish I had known. I think perspective is important because you think about businesses in general, whatever you do, right? You know, they're solving some sort of problem, and they're solving it in the way they think is best, and maybe their sales is structured in a certain way. But unique to anything customer facing, right? You know, like, you know, developers, you know, that write software, for example, or manufacturers who design physical devices. I mean, they're geniuses, right? They have, you know, they do their things. I could never assemble a dishwasher from scratch, you know, or fix a car or anything like that. But they're not customer facing necessarily, right? And so they're designing this thing from a, you know, engineering standpoint, right? From how do the pieces go together, and how do I build this thing so that it functions and solves the problem that my business is trying to solve. In a customer facing world, it's a little bit different than that, right? You know, it's the perspective of, well, what does the customer actually want from us? What services should we offer? What is the tone they want? You know, from a support perspective, if you came into a support room and said to a group of support leaders, into a conference room and said to a group of support leaders, you know, how do you support your customers? People are going to start putting up their hand and saying things like, oh, well, we have chat, we have email, you know, maybe we have some automated bot stuff, you know, they're going to text message, like the phone, you know, phone number. And I question that. And I say, well, you know, that's the medium, but how do you support your customers, right? Like, do you know what hours you should be opening, right? Like, what are your customers wanting? Do you know what languages you need to support? Do you know, are your customers frustrated because, you know, maybe you happen to sell a product that is used by, you know, senior citizens that may not be as familiar with text and email, and they would prefer a phone number. Did you look into that? What's their perspective of how they want to be supported? You know, that's the type of thing when I think about perspective, is that we always try to, I see this time and time again, where we try to solve problems from our perspective. You know, you even hear about that with chatbots and deflection, which is a huge thing right now, where it's like, oh, well, you know, refunds are repeatable. Let's just deflect that. Let's get a chatbot that can automatically do refunds, which is fine. But is that what your customers want? Right? It's just saying, oh, I'm sorry you didn't like that thing. Here's $20 back. You know, here's your order back. Is that what your customers want, or do they want that apology? Do they want that hand holding because maybe it was a luxury product and they think they deserve someone to say I'm sorry to them directly? So that's what I think about when I think about perspective, is that, support leaders need to talk to the people they're supporting, B2C, B2B. Maybe there's different demographics. Maybe you have different tiers. So, do your customers that are paying you more money need different types of service? It's not as simple as just saying, well, from my perspective, as long as we provide an email address and a phone number, people can contact us. It's just, that's a very business-centric perspective, because we're looking at how can we, staff a support channel as opposed to how do we provide the right services.
That is profound. I did not have that perspective before.
That's the beautiful thing about perspective, right?
I like that.